Today we're working on my personal 2015 Mini Cooper S. I have a bad water pump. So I'm going to start by basically taking off the front wheel to access the side of the engine. And then I have to remove the headlights. The headlights have 1, 2, 3, and where's the other one? Right there. 4 bolts on both sides. Remove both headlights. Then I'm going to attack the grill, disconnect the hood latch cable, remove the radiator core support, and go from there. After removing the wheel, I'm going to go ahead and take off this entire wheel well. You have to remove this cap. And then we have an 8mm bolt here. And then there's little plastic pins that are held in with these little Phillips head screws that you just unscrew, then pop the pin. So we remove all the Phillips head push pins, and then we have one of the air ducts for the intercooler here for the air intake. Those are 4 more 8mm bolts. And then after that, I'm going to attack this little plastic skid plate that has Phillips head screws holding it in. It's plastic. Alright, so after I remove these 4 bolts, 8mm bolts from the air intake there, take one of these. It's a plastic clip remover. You remove all these little Phillips heads, and these just pop out with this little tool. Nice and simple. Keep them all together so you don't lose any. Okay. One more up here. Come on out, buddy. There's one hidden up here. That's out. Now, remove this. See if there's any other guys hiding here. Should be able to pull this guy right out. Anyone hiding? Oh, so good. Alright. Gonna have to remove the whole thing. It looked like it was a 2-piece. Here it looks like it's a 2-piece. But it is not. Let's see if I can fold it out of the way, because I don't need to get to the back. You only need to access the belts, which are hidden in there. Crank pulley. All that's right there. So I'm gonna try to bend this out of the way. Without making a mess here. Destroying it, of course. That was simple. Okay, just fold it up out of the way. Try not to break it. There you go. So now we can see that I have a leaf in the frame. So here we go. Here's the crank. AC. AC's up in there. And this right here is that tension pulley that rides along the crank. And I don't know if we can see with the camera here, but it rides against the water pump right there. That guy up there is what we want to get after. So I'm going to continue to remove this lower skid plate here. One last thing out of the way. Then I'm going to come back and take the headlights off, both sides. And I'm removing the radiator core support, top section, and the grill, just so I can access this motor mount right here. This motor mount, once we remove it from the side bracket here, then I'll be able to actually remove that motor mount bushing bracket right there, so that I can access, basically so we can raise the engine. So once we take that motor mount bolt off, there's one more underneath here that we'll get to after we remove some more things. So now with the skid plate removed, you can see the other motor mount bolt that we're going to attack here after we remove all the other stuff from up top. As you can see, the serpentine belt here, you can access it now that the skid plate's removed and the fender well's removed. You can get to it, replace it, but the only way to loosen this thing, to take the tension off, is a really funky tension pulley, and I'll show you that here. Okay, I've removed the 4 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4. Since this is the Cooper S, this does have the windshield washer fluid reservoirs hooked into the lights here. So this is the windshield washer, or excuse me, the headlight washer. And that will have to be removed along with the harness going into the light right here. Plug it out. Plug it out. And I'll just remove this, but I gotta put the camera down. So on this side, since I had the windshield, or excuse me, the headlight washers on it, this is one of the headlight washers. This little retainer clip here did not want to come off. So rather than forcing, I just removed the 2 Torx screws off. And on this side, since I'm not going to be working on this side of the engine, I removed 3 headlight bolts. This bottom one is seized in place, but I can move the headlight enough out of the way to remove the radiator core support here. So in order to do that, I had to remove the 10mm bolt here that's holding the overflow container. And now I'm going to remove these 10mm bolts here to take off the grill and go from there. Now to remove the hood latch next off the core support, I used one of these tools here to just pry this up. It's got little clips in it right here. Now we're going to open this up to take off the 2 cables. So I popped that off. You can see here it's got the cable inside. Just take the cable off. Boom. That's it. It's out of the way. You can close this back up because you're going to end up feeding this thing back through here once you lift this core support off this whole setup here. So this guy here, if you've never removed the overflow container, it's got a little push pin on the bottom. Let's see if I can show it to you. Right there. That pulls into place. Now you just let this thing sit here. It's on the side of the way when you pull this core support off. So the 4 bolts that hold the core support up against the inner fender are 13 mils. I've already removed these 2. Take these 2 off next. And then I got to remove this one star bit here, which is holding on the intercooler tube here. I'm going to pull that off. Once I pull the core support off, I'll be able to take these hoses off to get better access to the upper motor mount right there. Don't forget your windshield washer fluid reservoir cap here. And you could use one of these also to pop this thing off, but I have the right one for that. One of these guys right here. Pull that up like that. Try not to break these. Pull that guy off. And now your windshield washer reservoir is loose. See? Let's get over here and get this star bit off next. Okay, so removing the radiator core support, it wasn't just 2 bolts here and 2 bolts there. One thing that I noticed that there was a, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 4 more 10mm bolts. Plus I went ahead and loosened up these 4 230s, 2 on each hood latch, here and here. And now the core support's loose, so I'm going to pull. Alright, I removed the entire motor mount, 2-piece motor mount here. 13mm bolts up top, 13 mils down here, and this one on the side here was a 16. Top bolt. This setup here was an 18. This top one was an 18. Now I'm going to remove the tension bracket. These are 10 mils, as you can see there. Remove that next. Then I'm going to attack that water pump pulley and see if I can get the water pump off. Alright, so I have removed this piece. This was the tension pulley that runs along the crank right there. This runs on the left side of the crank, bolted on with 3 bolts. After you remove the bolts, it comes right off. And then this pulley actually rides against the water pump. But on my situation, after I remove the water pump pulley, you could see where it's completely missing this rubber coated layer that rides along this piece here. So I have to order a new water pump pulley. I'm going to swap out the water pump, which is right there, I'm gonna go ahead and swap that out. That way all I'll be waiting for is the actual water pump pulley when it comes in. Okay, it's now the next day. I did last night install the old water pump, and I wanted to show, or excuse me, install the new water pump. I wanted to show the old one. So for this old one, with removed motor mount, you have the jack set up like I do with the wooden block. You can raise and lower the engine, basically in order to get to the water pump bolts. I was able to put the new one in and get 4 lower bolts in by hand, and then I raised the engine up to get this top one in by hand, and then I just started snugging them all the way around. So the new water pump is now in place. New water pump is in. See her hiding up there. So that's the new water pump. So new water pump's all tightened up in place. And I showed everybody earlier this pulley here where the plastic was completely worn out. So I wanted to show you that. And luckily, Mini Cooper of Warwick, Rhode Island, had the replacement on the shelf. And that's this guy here. You can see this plastic coating on it so that the friction from riding against the crank, like I explained earlier with this guy here, this guy runs along that crank pulley right there on this side, and then the water pump pulley rides on the opposite side here, and that's what causes the water pump to spin. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put this pulley in. After I bolt that guy on, I'm going to put this new one in here. This is the new one. And we'll go from there. Okay, so I've installed everything back, all the nuts and bolts. Right now what I'm doing is bleeding out the air in the expansion tank, overflow tank. So I wanted to show you the water pump and this system, the way it works. So there is the tension pulley setup that I put in. You can see it rides on the crank. And up there you see the water pump spinning. The way it works is off the filter system. Runs off the crank and then spins the water pump. Just like that. That's working on this shit. So now I'm just going to finish buttoning everything up. Inner wheel well, lower plastic skid plate, and the tire, and be done. So what I'm doing now is I filled up the expansion tank or overflow coolant tank. I actually only filled it up about halfway, and I've been letting the car run for a while to let the air out of the system. You can see there's still a lot of air in there bubbling up. So what I've done now is turned on the heat, full blast. I have a catch pan underneath. I'm gonna let this keep working for a little while until I don't see any more bubbles. Once the bubbles are out, I'm gonna pull some of that antifreeze out for the pump, and just to get it to the right level. So remember to use the right antifreeze also. This is a mini antifreeze coolant. It's the same as the BMW. It's this blue type of antifreeze. Gotta use this, don't mix it with water. So we'll just run for a little bit longer and it should be all set. Okay, I'm done bleeding the air out of the system. I actually didn't drain any antifreeze out of the tank. Once I closed it back up, it sucked back into the system to be allowed to go through the entire heating and cooling system to get into the heater core and whatnot. So now that I took the car for a little drive, and I'm going to let this thing cool down before I top off the fluid. But it shouldn't have any more air bubbles in it. Should be all set.